Subscribe and download over 1 million code snippet including this tutorial from codegive.com, link in the description below. Title: Understanding Python Float Size. Introduction. In Python, the float data type is used to represent floating point numbers, which are real numbers with a decimal point. It's essential to understand the size of a float in Python, especially when working with large datasets or memory-constrained environments. In this tutorial, we'll explore how Python represents floating point numbers and examine the size of a float object. Floating point representation in Python. Python uses the IEEE 754 standard for representing floating point numbers. This standard defines how floating point numbers are encoded in binary and provides rules for arithmetic operations on these numbers. The standard includes single precision, 32-bit, and double precision, 64-bit, formats, among others. Size of Python float. The size of a Python float can vary based on the underlying architecture of the system. However, a common representation is using 64 bits, which corresponds to double precision. This means that a Python float typically occupies 64 bits, 8 bytes, of memory. Checking the size of a float. To check the size of a float object in Python, you can use the sys module's getSizeOf function. The getSizeOf function returns the size of an object in bytes. This code snippet defines a float, my_float, and then uses sys.getSizeOf to determine the size of the float object in bytes. It's important to note that the getSizeOf function returns the size of the entire object, including any overhead. Output. The output may vary based on the Python implementation and system architecture, but it typically shows a size around 24 bytes, which includes the object's overhead. Conclusion. Understanding the size of a Python float is crucial for optimizing memory usage in your programs. By knowing the size, you can make informed decisions when working with large datasets or in memory-constrained environments. The IEEE 754 standard and the sys.getSizeOf function provide valuable tools for exploring and understanding the representation of floating point numbers in Python. ChatGPT.